Hey everyone, welcome to our English Deep Dive. Today we've got a special lesson, especially for all of you amazing Spanish speakers out there.
Yeah. So, are you ready to boost your English? Are you ready for some fun?
I think so.
I think so too.
Today we're going to focus on those little things, those tricky bits of grammar and vocabulary. We'll make it super clear and easy to understand. We might even throw in some Spanish just to make those connections extra strong, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, are you ready to get started?
I am.
Okay. Let's dive in. One of the things we often hear Spanish speakers kind of struggling with a little is the phrase feel like, right?
Yeah. Sometimes.
In Spanish, it's totally natural to say, like, "Tengo ganas de comer un taco," right? You want to
Yeah.
express that craving.
Right. Exactly.
But in English, when we use feel like, we don't use to after it if we're talking about doing something.
Yeah, we skipped the two.
So instead of saying, I feel like to eat a taco, which a lot of Spanish speakers might say naturally, the correct way, the natural way to say it in English, is I feel like eating a taco. So we drop that to, and we use that ing form of the verb.
That's a great explanation.
Thank you. I try. It's a small change,
Yeah.
but it really does make a big difference in sounding more fluent and natural, right?
Right.
One way to think about this is kind of a trick I use. It's like imagining you're already kind of doing the action in your mind. So you're feeling the craving, you're thinking about that taco, so you're feeling like eating it. It's already happening.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I like that.
So let's move on to another pair of verbs that can be a bit tricky, especially for Spanish speakers. We're talking about raise and rise. Oh my goodness, these two can be troublesome.
They can be, but once you understand the difference, it's actually pretty simple.
Oh yeah, you say that.
Okay, let's start with raise. Raise means to lift something up or to make something go higher.
Like when you raise your hand in class.
Exactly. Or when you raise a flag.
Yeah, those are good examples.
So the key thing here is that you or something else is actively causing something to move upwards.
You're making it happen, right?
Exactly.
Now let's look at rise. Rise describes something going up on its own without any external force.
Yeah, so think about the sun, right? It rises every morning.
Nobody's pushing it up.
Nobody's pushing it. Or think about bread dough. It rises naturally as it bakes.
Ah, so raise is about making something go up, and rise is about something going up naturally. Okay, I think I'm getting it.
You got it.
I have a little memory trick for the word raves, actually.
Oh, tell me.
I always think about that classic Bon Jovi song, Raise Your Hands. Every time I hear the word raise, I just picture a massive crowd at a concert. Everyone's raising their hands, singing along. It just makes me smile and helps me remember the meaning.
I like that. It's a good one.
Okay, let's move on to another verb that can be a bit tricky. It's the verb give. Give can be a little sneaky because it changes its structure depending on whether we're using a noun or a pronoun.
That's right.
So, can you walk me through this? I think I need a little help here.
Of course, happy to help. Let's say you're holding a book and you want to give it to your friend. The simple way to ask for it is, give me the book, right?
Yeah, totally.
So that's using the noun book. Now, let's say you don't want to repeat the word book and you want to use the pronoun it instead.
Okay.
Now, to do that, we have to change the structure a little. So you would say, give it to me.
Wait, so we switch the word order and add to.
Yep, you got it. It's a subtle but important change.
Okay, that actually makes sense.
And here's another little tip. When you say to in this context, it almost sounds like a soft R. Try saying it quickly. Give it to me. Give it to me.
Give it to me.
Give it to me. That's it. You're getting it.
It's like a little tongue twister, right?
It is. And the more you practice those tricky sounds, the more natural and fluent your English will become.
I'm loving this. Okay, so we've tackled feel like, raise, and rise, and now give. I think it's time to move on to some phrases and vocabulary, right?
I think so. How do you feel?
I feel ready.
Let's go. We'll start with two phrases that are very close in meaning. They're to be worth it and to pay off. They both express the idea that something is valuable, beneficial, even if it requires some effort or cost.
I love the phrase worth it. It's so positive. It reminds me of that famous L'Oreal slogan, because you're worth it.
Perfect example. And learning English can definitely be worth it. It opens up so many possibilities, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. And when you see your English skills improving, it really pays off, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like all that hard work, it's like you see the results, and it's so rewarding.
It's a great feeling.
Okay, let's look at how we can actually use these phrases in a sentence, in different structures. So you could say, it's worth visiting that new museum, or it's worth a visit.
Yeah, you can use them in a few different ways.
And similarly, you can say, learning English pays off, or it pays off to learn English.
Exactly.
The way you structure the sentence might be different, but that meaning, that core meaning, stays the same.
It does.
So it's like you're saying something is valuable or beneficial in the end, right?
You got it.
Okay, I'm feeling good about those phrases.
Great. Now, let's dive into some specific vocabulary. Let's make these words come alive. Okay. The first word we'll look at is rehearse.
Rehearse.
So think about getting ready for a performance, right? It could be a play, a concert, even a presentation at work.
Oh, I remember when I used to be in a band, we'd spend hours rehearsing.
Mhm.
We had this tiny, like, dimly lit basement. It was kind of chaotic, actually, but we made it work.
That's a perfect example.
It brings back memories.
You could say we rehearsed every weekend, or our rehearsal space was a little crazy, but we loved it.
Chaotic. That's the perfect word for it. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about some vocabulary you might hear at a wedding. You already know groom and bride in Spanish, right?
Of course, novio and novia, what else is there?
So the bride often wears a veil, which is velo in Spanish.
That's right.
And guests often receive a little gift, a keepsake, to remember the special day. That's recuerdo in Spanish.
I love how we're connecting these English words to their Spanish counterparts.
It really does help make it stick.
It does. Now let's look at some words that describe emotions. How about joy? Joy is a feeling of great happiness and pleasure, like pure delight.
Oh yeah, I like joy.
And bliss. Bliss is like a state of extreme happiness and peace. It's like pure contentment.
So joy is more like a burst of happiness, and bliss is like a deeper, longer lasting feeling.
You got it.
It makes me think of that saying, blissful ignorance.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And you know, we can actually find synonyms for these words, which is a great way to expand our vocabulary even more.
Yeah.
So joy can also be expressed as delight, happiness, elation. Bliss can be like euphoria, paradise, even heaven.
Wow. So many beautiful words.
Right. It's all about expanding that vocabulary web. Okay, let's tackle some words that can have multiple meanings, shall we?
Okay, I'm ready.
Let's start with bond.
Bond.
So bond can refer to a close connection between people, like a bond of friendship.
Like an unbreakable bond.
Right. But it can also refer to a financial instrument. So you might hear something like a government bond.
Oh, that's interesting. So it could be about relationships or about money, right?
Yeah.
Just depends on the context.
Exactly. Context is key.
Okay, I'm ready for another one.
Okay, how about prop?
Prop, like in a play.
It can be.
Yeah.
So as a noun, prop can refer to an object that's used in a play or a movie, like a stage prop.
Like, in a historical drama, they might have swords or crowns. Those are props.
Exactly.
Or a magic wand.
Oh, yeah. But prop can also be a verb. And then it means to support something physically. Like you might prop up a bookshelf with a piece of wood, for example.
Okay, so we have to pay attention to how it's being used.
That's right. Context clues.
Give me another one. I'm on a roll.
All right. How about sheer? This one can be tricky.
Sheer. Okay.
So sheer can mean completely, utterly, like sheer determination.
Yeah, I've heard that.
But it can also describe something that's very thin or transparent, like sheer curtains that let the light through.
Oh. Okay, so it can be about intensity or about thinness.
Exactly.
These multiple meanings can be tough.
They can be, but you're doing great.
I feel like I'm learning so much. Okay, are you ready for some even more, maybe a little less common words?
I think so. Let's expand our vocabulary horizons.
Okay, let's start with bizarre.
Bizarre. Okay, good. So think about something strange, unusual, out of the ordinary.
Like a creature from another planet.
Exactly.
Or like a bizarre dream that you can't even explain.
The lesson gives us this example. There are many bizarre creatures in the depths of the ocean.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So many mysteries down there. All right, how about feasible?
Feasible.
Feasible means something is possible, it's likely to be successful. So a feasible plan is realistic and achievable.
Like a feasible way to learn English.
Exactly. Or, the lesson says, the new project was economically feasible.
Ah, so like it's doable within a budget.
Right. Now let's move on to sensational, which means something is extraordinarily good, exciting.
Like a sensational concert.
Perfect example. The lesson also mentions sensational news, but, sometimes that can be exaggerated.
Yeah, you have to be careful with those sensational headlines.
Exactly. Critical thinking is important.
Okay, what's next?
How about enunciate? Enunciate means to pronounce words clearly and distinctly.
So like A news anchor enunciates their words so everyone can understand the news clearly.
Perfect.
Or when you're learning a new language, it's important to enunciate those new sounds.
Absolutely. And finally, let's look at hysterical.
Oh, hysterical. Like laughing so hard you can't breathe.
It can be that. Yeah. It means someone is uncontrollably emotional.
Yeah.
The lesson also mentions a hysterical tone, which could be someone's overdramatic way of speaking.
Ah, so it can be positive or negative.
Exactly. But it always has that sense of extreme emotion.
I think I'm getting it.
You are!
Okay, now it's time to see all these grammar points and vocabulary words in action. Bring on the sentences.
All right. Let's do it. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay, here's the first one. If you raised your hand before talking, they would pay attention to you.
Ah, so imagine you're in a meeting, right? And you have this amazing idea you want to share. This sentence is saying that if you politely raise your hand before speaking, people would be more likely to listen.
You're showing respect, and it makes a difference.
It's about those small gestures that can really enhance communication.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, what's next?
Okay, here's a sentence using one of our new vocabulary words. My dog has never bitten anybody.
Oh, that's a good dog. And this sentence uses the present perfect tense, which we often use when we talk about something that happened at some point in the past, but the exact time isn't important. We also see the irregular past participle of bite, which is bitten.
It's a great example of how grammar and vocabulary work together.
Totally. It paints a picture.
It does.
Okay, this next one might bring back some memories. Why did you lie to me?
Oh, yeah, we've all heard that one before.
This one uses the past simple tense to ask a question about an action that happened in the past. It also shows the irregular past tense of the verb lie, which is lied.
And even though the sentence is short, it can have so much meaning behind it, right?
Yeah, it can express disappointment, sadness, even anger, or maybe even playful teasing, depending on the context.
It's true. Language is so powerful.
It really is. Okay, are you ready for a sentence that uses worth it?
Let's hear it.
The concert had better be worth it.
Ooh, that sounds like someone has high expectations.
Yeah, they're really hoping that this concert is going to be amazing. It's like saying, I've put in a lot of effort to be here, so it better be good.
It's all about that sense of anticipation, right?
Exactly. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. Before we move on, I think it would be really helpful if we could model the pronunciation of these sentences for our listeners, right?
Yes, I agree.
Paying attention to linking and natural intonation. And then, everyone listening, we encourage you to repeat after us out loud. It's the best way to practice. Okay, ready to give it a try?
I am. You lead the way.
Okay, here we go. If you raised your hand before talking, they would pay attention to you. If you raised your hand before talking, they would pay attention to you. Now you try.
Excellent.
Okay, next one. My dog has never bitten anybody. My dog has never bitten anybody. Your turn.
Fantastic.
All right, last one. Why did you lie to me? What did you lie to me? Give it a go. The more you practice speaking English out loud, the more confident and fluent you'll become. We're so proud of you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, we have much more to cover, so stick with us.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our episode, where we'll continue exploring more grammar, phrases, and vocabulary to help you rock your English. Hasta pronto. Hola todos. Welcome back to our English deep dive. Are you ready for more?
I am. Let's jump right back into those example sentences where we see, grammar and vocabulary all working together.
About the puzzle, right.
Exactly.
And the more pieces you have, the easier it gets to create the whole picture.
I love that analogy.
Okay. Are you ready for our next sentence?
Bring it on.
Okay, here we go. I promise I've never lied to you.
Ah, a sentence about honesty. This one uses the present perfect tense. And we often use this tense when we're talking about something that started in the past and continues into the present.
Right.
And notice how the word never really adds emphasis here. It makes it a strong statement. It's like you're saying from the beginning, I have always been honest with you.
And that's important, right? Building trust.
So important. Okay, this next sentence is a little bit tricky. It might be tricky, especially for Spanish speakers, because it uses a grammar structure called the past subjunctive. If I lay down, I wouldn't get up until tomorrow.
Yeah, this one can be a little confusing. So the past subjunctive, it's a way of talking about things that aren't actually true, but we're imagining them, hypothetical situations.
Right. And in Spanish, you might use the imperfect subjunctive for this, like, si me acostara, no me levantaría hasta mañana.
That's exactly right. And notice how in English we use lay instead of lie in this case.
Yeah, those two verbs, always tricky. But the sentence basically means, I'm so tired, if I were to lie down right now, I'd probably sleep until tomorrow. I think we can all relate to that.
I know for sure, especially after a long day of, practicing English. Okay, let's stick with lay and lie for a minute. How about this one? Sarah laid the baby down, and then she lay down.
So in this sentence, both laid and lay are in the past tense. But they have slightly different meanings, don't they?
They do. It can be confusing, I know.
So laid is the past tense of the verb lay, which means to put something down gently, like a baby. And then lay is the past tense of the verb lie, which means to rest or recline.
Yeah, and it's all about practice, right? The more you see these verbs in action, the more natural they'll become.
For sure. Okay, I'm ready for another sentence with worth it.
All right, you asked for it. Here's a good one. If we had to pay, it wouldn't be worth it.
Okay, this one's taking us back to those hypothetical situations. But this time it's in the past. It's like saying, looking back, if we had been required to pay, we wouldn't have felt it was a good value.
It's like weighing the pros and cons.
Right.
Sometimes, the price tag can really change our perception of something.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, let's mix things up. How about a sentence with feel like, but in a different way?
Okay, let's do it. How about this one? I feel like taking a trip.
Ah, I love this one. It's expressing a desire or an inclination, right? That feeling of wanting to go somewhere new, have an adventure.
Yeah, I'm feeling that right now. And learning English, it really can open up those opportunities for travel.
Yeah.
When you can communicate, the world feels so much smaller.
Totally. I'm all for exploring new places.
Right.
Okay, let's keep the momentum going. Here's another one. I wonder what Marie is doing.
Ah, good one. So this sentence is expressing curiosity, right? It's like thinking out loud.
Yeah, that feeling of wanting to know something. And in Spanish, you might say, me pregunto qué estará haciendo María.
Exactly. It's that same kind of gentle curiosity.
Okay, now for a sentence you'll hear a lot in everyday English. It might be a bit more informal, though. How come you came so early?
Yeah, so how come is basically a more casual way of saying why.
It just sounds friendlier, right?
It does. Okay, how about this one? The show had better be worth it.
Okay, we've seen a sentence similar to this before, but this one sounds even more emphatic. It's like, this show needs to be amazing because I've invested so much in seeing it.
It's like you're really setting those expectations high.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Here's one that asks about how long something takes. How long would it take to do it again?
Okay, so this is using the conditional tense. We've got that would in there, and it's asking a hypothetical question about the future.
It's imagining a scenario, right? Like if you were to do this again, how much time would you need?
Exactly. Useful for planning and estimating, right?
I like it. Okay, how about this one? I've never given such a long speech.
Ah, this one uses the present perfect tense. And it's describing a unique experience, right? Something that's never happened before.
Yeah, it's like saying this is the longest speech I've ever given in my life. And it really highlights that present perfect structure.
Yeah, you explained that well. Okay, are you ready for a phrasal verb?
Always.
Okay, here's a sentence with one. She left so angry, she slammed the door.
Ooh, drama. I can feel the tension. So here we have that phrasal verb, slam the door, to show how angry she was.
Yeah, phrasal verbs, they add that extra intensity to our sentences.
And this sentence reminds us that actions can speak louder than words sometimes.
We can. Okay, let's revisit a sentence we saw earlier. Why did you lie to me?
Ah, this one gets straight to the point. It's a direct question about honesty. And it's often used when someone feels betrayed or hurt, right?
Yeah, it's a serious question, and it reminds us that communication and trust, those are essential for healthy relationships.
So important. Okay, how about this one? You shouldn't shout at me. What do you think about this one?
So this sentence is using the modal verb shouldn't to give advice, to express an opinion about someone's behavior. And it's doing it politely but firmly.
Yeah, and that idiom, shout at, implies that someone is being aggressive or disrespectful, right? Like they're making the other person uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all about setting those boundaries, And it reminds us that communication should always be respectful, even when we disagree.
That's a great point. Okay, here's a sentence where we see a verb used metaphorically. You mustn't shoot just like that.
Okay, so shoot here doesn't literally mean to fire a gun. It means to act impulsively without thinking things through.
It's like saying, don't rush into things. Think about the consequences.
Yeah, sometimes we need that reminder. Okay, what else do we have?
Okay, back to that dramatic exit. She slammed the door.
Oh, I remember this one.
So simple, but so powerful, right? It really paints a picture.
It does. Just one verb slam, but we can almost hear the sound of that door, you know?
Exactly. Strong verbs that can really bring those sentences to life.
Okay, here's one that asks about someone's motivation. Why did he start to shout?
So this is using the past simple tense with start to. It's asking about the reason behind a sudden change in behavior.
Yeah, it's like, what triggered this reaction? What made him raise his voice so suddenly?
Good question. And it reminds us that communication is a two-way street, right? We need to listen, ask questions, and try to see things from other people's perspectives.
Absolutely. Empathy is super important.
Mm.
Okay, I think we've got time for maybe one or two more. How about we revisit, you shouldn't shout at me.
Yeah, this sentence, as we discussed before, it's about setting boundaries, communicating your expectations.
It's all about that self-respect, right?
Right.
Knowing that you deserve to be treated with respect, and it's okay to say something when someone is crossing a line.
Exactly.
Okay, last one, and this is an idiom, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
He shoots from the hip.
Oh, yes, a classic. So this means that someone is impulsive, they speak their mind without thinking things through.
Yeah, they're bold and outspoken, maybe a little bit reckless.
It depends on the context, right? But it definitely adds some color to our language.
I love how idioms can be so expressive, you know?
Yeah.
They really add that personality to our English.
It's true. And idioms are always evolving. New ones are being created all the time. It's what keeps language so dynamic and interesting.
I'm all for that. Welcome back to our English deep dive. We're in the home stretch now.
We are. And I'm so impressed. You've all been doing such a great job sticking with us.
I know, right? I feel like we've covered so much ground today.
We have, from tricky grammar to those colorful idioms.
But the real learning, it happens when you actually start using all of these things
Yeah.
out in the real world,
Exactly. And those real conversations.
So let's dive back into those example sentences one last time and see how all these pieces of the puzzle, they fit together.
Okay, sounds good.
Remember, our goal is not to just memorize these sentences, but really understand those underlying patterns and structures so that you can start creating your own sentences with confidence.
That's the goal.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, let's take a look at this sentence and what is worth it for you.
This is a good one. It's all about self-reflection, right?
It really is.
It's asking you to really think about those things that are important to you, those things that matter.
Like, what makes you happy? What are you willing to, put your energy into?
What are your dreams? What are your passions? Those are the things that are worth it, right?
Yeah, totally. Okay, how about we shift gears a little bit? We've got a sentence here that uses feel like to express a desire. I feel like taking a trip.
Ooh, I get that feeling all the time.
I know. That wanderlust, that urge to explore new places, it's a powerful thing.
It is. And learning English, it can really help make those travel dreams a reality.
Totally. When you can communicate in English, you can connect with people from all over the world. It's amazing.
It opens up so many doors.
It does. Okay, let's try something a little different. This next sentence is all about pronunciation. This one might be especially helpful for our Spanish-speaking friends. Taking a trap. Trap. Letter R. Trap. Trap. A trap.
Okay, so this might seem a little strange, but it's actually a really smart way to practice that tower sound, which can be tricky.
Right. It's like isolating those sounds so that you can really get them right.
And, pronunciation, it's all about that muscle memory. So the more you practice, the better you'll get.
Okay, let's switch back to something a little bit more conversational. How was the journey?
A simple question. But it can spark so many interesting conversations.
Right. It shows that you're genuinely interested in hearing about someone's experiences, their travels, their adventures.
And everyone has a story to tell.
Okay, to wrap up our deep dive, let's look at this sentence. It celebrates a big achievement in language learning. I've never given such a long speech.
I love this one. It's recognizing all that hard work, all that progress you've made.
Yeah, so it's celebrating those milestones.
And remember, learning a language, it's a journey. It's not a race.
It's about those small steps,
Exactly. And every step you take, it brings you closer to fluency.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So keep practicing, keep exploring the English language.
We're so proud of all of you. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn.
Experiment. Have fun with it. And most importantly, don't give up. You've got this.
And, we're here to support you. every step of the way.
Absolutely. Happy learning, everyone.